What's going on, raza? Luis aquí con otro video. Today I have something a little different for you guys. I'm usually on the internet. Yo usualmente estoy en el internet, and I always come across people who do tier lists for rap albums, for R&B albums. So today I have for you guys something a little different. Hoy vamos a hacer un rating de los albums de Marca MP. Today we're gonna rate Marca MP's albums from best to worst, ¿verdad? Y aquí les tengo lo que viene siendo lo mejor. Lo mejor viene siendo una masterpiece, lo que viene siendo lo mejor que se pudo sacar, lo mejor que pudo existir, que pudo crear este grupo, que viene siendo una masterpiece, hasta ni pedo, okay? So here we go, we have Marca MP's albums tier list. So starting off, we have Blindo. Blindo is the most recent album that Marca MP has. And if I'm honest with you guys, there was Eslabón Armado's bass player that said that it wasn't really that good, y que no sé qué. But to be honest, this album has its good and its bad. Lo que viene siendo este álbum es que it shines, it really, like, you can tell that it's a good album when you listen to the original songs que escribió Chato. Lo que viene siendo canciones como Sembrando el Terror, Te Quiero, Sofisticado. Esas canciones que escribió Chato, creo se llama como Hueso. También esta otra rola, otro corridito que escribió Chato. Esas rolas, like, that's where Marca MP shines, because like they have an idea of where they're going with the music. But for this album, when you listen to the covers, cuando escuchas los covers que hizo el Chato, como los covers que hizo de Grupo Risky, como dicen en TikTok, o Grupo Arriesgado, you listen to Ismael, you listen to Los Mitotes, and they're okay covers, they're not bad. But the thing is that it's just not something that, like, stands out, you know? It's not really something that you listen to and you're like, oh, this is a dope cover. Los Mitotes sounds really good with Marca MP because they did this, you know? They didn't really do any of that. Including the Románticas that they did covers for, they weren't really that good, you know? Like, they never really popped off. But like I said, where they do shine is where they're with their originales. So for this album, I'm gonna rate it not a masterpiece, because it's definitely not a masterpiece. But for me, for this album, I would say, because it's half and half, I'm gonna be like, it's dos tres. You know, like it's okay, it's not bad, it's alright. Pero para mí, este álbum es dos tres, ¿verdad? Now, moving on to Seguimos Avanzando, this album. Seguimos Avanzando, I think, was the previous album before Blindo. It's a good album. It's a dope album. It's a good album. It's a dope album. I would say that this album didn't have enough románticas, which I think Marca MP is known for. Chato is definitely a master when it comes to writing románticas. But for this album, I want to say that it's not a bad album. I definitely listen to 3 or 4 of the corridos that are in this album, especially Pa Contarla y Pa Andar Relax. Those, to me, are my favorite songs off the album, and I don't think they get enough credit for it. But also, like, if you try to look through the album, it's out of the, like, 8 or 9 songs that are on the album, there's only really, like, 3 songs that you do like, ¿verdad? At least for my personal taste, this album también va a ser otro 2-3, ¿verdad? It's going to be 2-3 más o menos. It could have a romántica that could have solidified it to be a little bit better, like, you know, otro pedo, como dice J.O.P. But para mí va a ser 2-3, ¿verdad? Now, moving on to Marca MP's En Vivo Volume 1 EP. Este fue uno de los primeros albums que sacó Marca MP. This is one of the first albums that they took out. And if I had to rate this album is the one that has songs like El Güero, Ríos por Apellido, Te Apuesto, It's a small EP. It only has 4 songs. I think the last song viene siendo El Shadow, but this album has to be a masterpiece. And the only reason why I say it's a masterpiece is because this is the album that has the song that is responsible for Marca MP going viral. El Güero is the song that literally made this grupo go viral every single, like everywhere, like in every single platform, ya sea TikTok, which I don't think anyone really used TikTok when this album came out, but Instagram, Facebook, I'm pretty sure even on Snapchat, people were bumping El Güero every single place you could think of. And there's another album that also was already out the time that this album went viral, and that has to be Despegando el Vuelo. And I would also certify this album as a masterpiece. Estos dos álbumes fueron los primeros álbumes que subieron Marca MP, and I gotta say that these 2 albums were already like, they're staples of what Marca MP is, you know. This is back when the original grupo used to be Cristian and Chato, and obviously you guys that follow Marca MP already know, like, there was some issues and they just didn't end up together because of certain things. But like during this time, like the songs that are on these albums are just freaking perfect. Like these 2 albums, like you could probably listen to these 2 albums from beginning to end without having to skip any songs, because in these albums todas las canciones están, like, son unos corridones, son unas románticas bien chingonas. Like on Despegando el Vuelo you have ¿Qué me faltó? No me voy a rajar. What's the other song? I have it right here. Sabes Amor, Checo León. Like you could go through the beginning and the end of the album for Despegando el Vuelo, and I'm pretty sure you will not want to skip any of these songs. And they're just so good because this is like a grupo that you end up finding out, and they're starting off like the way it's recorded. It's raw, you know. I think it's a like a live performance on both albums. They're live, obviamente porque dicen Vivo, ¿verdad? But like the way you hear the music, you know, it's not something that's polished. It's not something that's really processed. O sea, es algo que se grabó en vivo, y aunque esté desafinada la guitarra un poquito en ciertas canciones, aunque la tuba se escuche muy fuerte en cierta parte, si hay errorcitos o no hay, like todo esto, like it's the rawness of it, you know. Like just hearing the music in these 2 albums, like it's magic, you know. Y por eso yo diría que estos son las 2 masterpieces que ha sacado Marca MP, porque hasta la fecha, para mí, no han sacado algo que pueda mejorar esto, you know. Like these are the best albums that they've taken out. Ahora, moving along, I'm gonna have to go with the preferidas. These albums, I just want to get these out of the way because las preferidas, each one has a story, each one has its own place in this situation, but I'm gonna just tell you why I think these albums are where I categorize them, and I'm gonna show you one by one, and I'm gonna give you a reason right away. Starting off with, I believe, Las Preferidas Volume 1, I'm gonna put this as 2-3. This album is okay. Obviamente Las Preferidas vienen siendo covers. Estos 3 albums que ven aquí, Las Preferidas Volume 1, Volume 2, Volume 3, and Volume 4, cada una pues tiene covers. Son covers de otros grupos. I don't think there's really any original songs in any of these covers de Marca MP. And Las Preferidas, during the time that it came out, it was good because it lets you see what other people would listen to when Marca MP would go play their privadas. And you could see that they have repertorio, they have a lot of corridos. So in this sense, I would say this is an okay album. It's not bad, you know. It doesn't suck, but it's not something that you're like, oh wow, you know, like I really need to listen to more of this grupo because they're outstanding or they're amazing. So I would put it as 2-3, you know, está más o menos. Las Preferidas, Volume 2. This one I'm gonna put as Les Falta. And I don't mean that the grupo Les Falta, I'm not saying that it sucks. But the reason why I put this album in this category is because there really isn't like a lot that it offers, in my opinion. Like, there really isn't a lot of songs on this album that you're really like wowed by. I think the only few songs, si no me equivoco, is gonna be like Yo Te Necesito. This album only really has one song that shines out and that every single girl that listens to Marca MP likes, and that's Yo Te Necesito de los Bukis. And to be honest, it's not really like the best album after that. Like, that's the only good song, the only good cover that they took out. But after that, like, most of the songs are very forgettable. Like, you don't really remember a lot of the songs that are on this album. So for that reason, I'm gonna put it on Les Falta. Preferidas Volume 3. This is the album that happened, I think, the moment that the Soc, which used to be Marca MP's Segundero, and Christian, which used to be the original Requintero of the grupo, ended up dipping because of all the situation that Chato had. And this album has a lot of norteño, has tololoche, has accordion, and it was a different vibe, because I didn't really expect this from Chato, but I understand why he did it. He didn't really have any músicos that were solidified in the grupo, so he had to, you know, figure out something, and he had to keep pushing music during his recovery when, you know, his legs were still healing. But to be honest, this one has pretty good songs. You know, I'm not gonna hate on it. I don't think it's gonna be bad. If you listen to it, obviously, there's songs like there's the Camila song. I forget what it's called, but he has like three or four good songs on this album. So I'm gonna put it as dos tres. And for the last Las Preferidas album, I'm gonna give it what am I gonna give this one? It's because the thing, at least for me, is that Marca MP really doesn't have like albums that are like super great or super bad. It's either like it's amazing, it's más o menos, and I don't think they really have a lot of bad albums. To be honest, they don't really miss. They do pretty good. But to be honest, if you try to ask me right now what songs I remember off of this album specifically, la neta, por eso le vamos a darle falta, because I don't remember what songs. And I don't think it sucked, but it's just not something that, you know, I remember off the top of my head. I don't really remember what songs are on this album. So for that reason alone, le vamos a poner le falta, ¿verdad? No Me Quejo. This is the first studio album, like professional, that Marca MP took out. This was premiered. They premiered 2 songs on Pepe's Office, I believe, during the time. I don't know if this was during quarantine or this was a little bit after quarantine. But Los Muchachos talked to Pepe through a live, I believe, or through a webcam. They played the 2 songs from home. And to be honest, I want to really like the album, but if I'm honest with you, I'm gonna put it as ni pedo. And it's not to say, like I said, that the song sucks, like the album sucks, but it is definitely very, very different from what we had originally heard from Marca MP. During the time, we had only listened to live versions of songs de Marca MP's music, and when you listen to this album, it's all very processed. Like, Chato usually leaves his song with a lot of reverb, with a lot of echo. La tuba usualmente se escucha retumbando, you know. And if you listen to this album, in this album, everything's very processed. Everything, like, some of the songs are really slow when it comes to the corridos, or the, you know, maybe songs that are alteradas. It's very slow. If you listen to Chato's voice in certain songs, like El Tato, I believe, they took off a lot of the reverb. It's the song, Chato's voice sounds very dry, like no se escucha como Marca MP, you know. And there's not a lot of songs. If I've seen a lot of TikTok videos, if I see a lot of Instagram videos, there's not really a lot of songs that girls ask for. There's not a lot of songs that people cover. There's not a lot of songs that even Marca MP there's not really a lot of songs from this album that Marca MP really plays, or they even try to play at their concerts. So for that reason alone, I'm gonna put it at ni pedo, because I just don't feel a lot of people even remember a lot of the songs that are on here. For En Vivo, for the first time that they played El Malecón, Marca MP's En Vivo at El Malecón sold out. I'm gonna have to put it at Le Falta, just because there wasn't really a lot of songs that we got from this album that were different. A lot of the songs on this album are just live versions of other songs that we already had from the Masterpiece albums. So for that reason alone, I'm gonna put it here. And the only other good song that came out from this live performance was A Través del Vaso. It was a good cover. It wasn't like amazing, but it was pretty good. So I'm gonna put it at Le Falta. Moving on, there's El Canton. I think this has to be during the time that El Nitro came out. And for this album, I'm gonna put it at Otro Pedo. This has to be the album that, for me, impressed me to the point that I didn't think that Chato was gonna come out with a grupo. And during this time, Tizoc and Christian decided to leave the project and decided to do their own thing, because I'm guessing they just didn't want to be associated to Chato. This is the moment that Chato proved to his público, to his fans, that nothing was going to stop him. And the songs that came out of this album, like El Muchacho de la Barba, and I believe a few other corridos that are on this album is the one where I was like, dang, El Chato, like for reals, is not going to stop for anything. And this is the time that El Nitro joined the project. And to be honest, that was a smart move on Chato, because Nitro has fit so perfectly into Chato's style. They have really like worked together, and they have made a lot of good music recently. So for that, I'm going to put this album, Desde el Canton, in the category Otro Pedo. Flores. For Flores, this one was tough. Honestly, this is also during the time that Tizoc and Christian were in the project. I honestly didn't expect for this album to be as good as it was. But the only flaw that I would find on this project would have to be that there was no corridos. Ahora, based on the title of the album, I would have to say that this album is supposed to be only románticas. The title Flores sounds like something like a romantic person would probably give someone that he likes. Su novia, alguien a quien está pretendiendo, a su esposa. Basically, Flores is a romantic album, you know? And I gotta say that all the songs on Flores, if si no me equivoco, all of them are great. They're all good, you know? And so for that reason alone, during the time that I didn't think they were going to come out with better music, they proved me wrong, and I had to say that Flores is Otro Pedo. I have to say that Flores is another good album. It's not a masterpiece. I feel like a masterpiece would include corridos, and it would include románticas, and this album only had románticas, so for that reason alone, I'm going to have to put it in Otro Pedo. Despegando el Vuelo, Volume 2. The last album I have for you guys. To be honest, for this album, I honestly, this has to be like the cement. This has to be the one point where Chato proved that he was back. He was 100%. This was the time that Nitro was solidified as Marca MP's Requintista. And this is the time that Esteban had proved to Chato that he was there for him through thick and thin. And he was going to be there for him until the end of the project. This album is pretty good, but I'm going to put it at Otro Pedo simply because it came out with Marca MP's, or one of the Marca MP's best corridos, which has to be Acá en Guanajuato. I think this is one of the best corridos that Chato has written, and I find myself bumping that corrido all the time. I think it's one of the best corridos that he's written. So for that reason, I'm gonna have to put it on Otro Pedo. Let me know in the comments if you agree with my list. Let me know if there's something that I missed. Let me know if you would have set them in a different way. If there would have been albums who you would have preferred to be in Ni Pedo, that it sucked, that it was bad. All of that, let me know in the comments. Also, let me know if there's any other artists whose albums you want me to rate. Please let me know in the comments and I'll do my best to try to do a rating list for it. Thank you guys for watching. This was Luis. Hasta la próxima.